Greetings, we are Ensanguinate from Ljubljana and we play the black and metal of death. You are watching Death Metal Promotion. We are a black and death metal band, which means that, our thematic focus is death, as it should be for, every band in this particular style. And we draw a lot of inspiration. Actually, this is a thing that's kind of like been taking more and more hold in our band recently. We draw a lot of inspiration from the '80s and from the '70s. So a lot of black and death metal from the late '80s, and a lot of hard rock, occult rock music, different kinds of sounds, basically from the '70s and the '80s.
Early
Anything that
metal.
fits. Early heavy metal, definitely. Anything that fits. So big guitars, harsh vocals, a lot of speed, a lot of tempo, but a lot of variety. Something that kind of like died out after the '80s. That's Ensanguinate for you in a nutshell. Death and darkness, vintage black magic. Right?
Question number two.
Question number two. It's a word that we came up with on our own, and there's two aspects of it basically. So to imbue something with blood, sanguine energy, that spark, that zeal, that fire, to imbue our music, our lives, basically, by way of this band with fire and zeal, and this spark that I'm talking about, this energy on one hand, and on the other, it is morbidity, somberness, death, darkness, Satanism, absolutely. That is what the symbol of blood, the twofold nature of the symbol of blood means to us. And the nature of Ensanguinate, the mission statement of Ensanguinate, is to imbue both ourselves as creators and our listeners with this energy. Twofold.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we write most of like the riffs, the main like skeletons for the songs. Sometimes it's mostly mine, sometimes it's mostly Andre's, but it's never a kind of like a lot of contemporary bands seem to operate on a very kind of technical, and I don't mean like music wise, but they just sense each other's stuff, they learn it, and then that's kind of the song. That's not good enough for me or Andre for that matter, or anybody in our band really. So we tend to tweak it a bit if there's something to tweak, but like the final seal of approval is always we get together in the rehearsal space, we jam through it. Like maybe I don't know, somebody says this part's too long, this part's too short, this doesn't need a solo, or this definitely needs a solo. Yeah. So when we're all kind of, when the last chord rings out, we look at each other and go, "Fuck yeah, that's the song." That's when I can say, "Okay,
yeah,
this
that's
is going on the album."
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it gets axed.
Definitely.
Never be afraid to kill your babies.
No shame in that. Yeah, if a song doesn't pass muster, then it just doesn't. But even going back to the beginning, I like writing the initial seed, the skeleton of a song. It's usually the two of us, but I like doing it in a team, regardless of who it is. Yeah, a lot of the time, inspiration strikes at weird times of the night, or on different occasions, and then you record a riff, or you hum it to yourself, or you remember it in some other way. But in general, I think I like it. I like those songs the best that we actually create from start to finish between the two of us, or the entire band together in the jam space. Those are the best, and it's something that sadly is kind of losing traction in metal from what I hear. A lot of people just write, one person writes it, sends it to the others, and tells them to learn it. So, as I said earlier, all death metal should be primarily focused on its namesake, the topic of death, and exploring it, diving deep into it head first. But not necessarily the way a lot of people view it as coming to terms with grief or loss, or basically softening its blow. Instead, we kind of seek to shake hands with it and accept it for what it is in all its power, might, glory, not weaken its impact, rather just absorb its full severity, shake hands with it, and get...
Not something people normally bask in.
Yeah,
but
we do, definitely. That antinomian energy of just basically absorbing negativity, worshiping it, writing songs about it, and getting as close as possible to that sensation of negativity, of darkness, death, through each performance. Through each performance,
I like this analogy that I read recently where it says like there's this whole positivity movement, like people are always told to be positive, and someone said, well, you can't really run from shadows. The best you can do is turn around and face them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and better yet, make friends with them.
exactly.
They make for powerful shadows. Make for very powerful, powerful allies, and we like to converse with them with each, songwriting session, performance. Uh, Basically, that is the main should be the main objective of black and death metal. The way we view it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the emotion you experience, that's up to you. But
That's up to you, but we always have space in our ranks for allies. It is music for people who feel these things and who experience them in a similar fashion to our own. No dogma, absolutely, but yeah, kindred spirits, the hordes, as Bathory would call it, I suppose. Definitely.
I mean, I think based on what you just said, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
And the process itself wasn't like terribly interesting, unlike some cover art stories.
Yeah, there's no big controversy going on there. No, it was pretty. The communication was pretty clear cut. We just contacted Chaos Dictator from Serbia, um, whose art we were familiar with from before, and you know, appreciated greatly. Told him what the general topic of the record was, basically approaching chaos and sublimating the concept of death, be it from a literary perspective. Each song has its own perspective, from a literary perspective, from philosophical or psychological or any kind of perspective, and sublimating it into the chaotic nature of Satanism, basically. And the corpse ascending into chaos represents that perfectly. I think we didn't guide his hand so much as tell him what the guiding principles were, and he captured it masterfully. So, in all of its crudeness, ugliness, and starkness.
Not a lot, really. I mean, we weren't given like any specific limitations
No.
or guidelines. It was very. We sent them. I believe the demo was what won them over. They just kind of said that we like it. Do your thing.
Yeah.
They were good on the PR side of things. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, we pushed. We tried to get the record basically into every nook and cranny, and they definitely helped us accomplish that for sure. But yeah, no creative limitations or anything like that. I don't think that really happens as much these days. I don't think, not like in the '80s, where the label would kind of like force your hand.
Yeah, speaking of labels.
Oh, speaking of labels.
It really depends on the deal you have, the scope, size of the label.
Yeah.
Where they're from to an extent.
What kind of music you're playing.
What kind of music you're playing,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it helps to have a label that understands death metal, so that is definitely a positive, to be amongst kindred spirits, to be label mates with bands such as Volcano and Nomenon, of course, it's a very good thing for us. Feels good. And yeah, definitely the DIY aspect has a lot of merit to it as well, definitely. But the label just makes things such as PR and the financial side of things, basically the non-musical aspects, makes it so much easier for us and allows us to focus on the music, basically. Still be involved in it, but not make that kind of like because a lot of the times from the DIY releases that I've done, it kind of turns into a full-time job for a set amount of time, and that really does detract your focus from the music. So a label is definitely beneficial in that regard. Yeah. Crucial, I don't know, but beneficial for sure.
I mean, there's like 1,001 success stories of people who have never touched a label, and
Yeah,
I mean, it's very clear it can be done, but
for sure, I'm sure there's also 10,000 failure stories as well. So
on both sides,
on
probably.
both sides, probably. So yeah. Shit, I think I first started listening to it when I was a kid. Actually, I got into Possessed probably from thank you lists on either some kind of Exodus or Slayer CD or whatever that just name drop Possessed, and it's with such a cool name. You know, it was pretty hard to find stuff like that in Slovenia when I was a kid, which was not that long ago, but still, you know, um, buying stuff off of the internet wasn't as widespread.
Never mind going to a modern brick and mortar store.
I that's where I actually did get Seven Churches. It was like a mall type affair basically. It wasn't a specialized store. I just lucked out and got it somewhere in a mall that had it for peanuts. I got Seven Churches, and I remember I put it in, and the intro, Tubular Bells, like right off the bat, the Exorcist theme, and I didn't even know the movie at that point, but I was already sold. You know, and by the time the intro rolled by, just the most hideous, cacophonous, crazy shit. Uh, and I loved it right off the bat because I connected it with Slayer and Venom, which I'd known before. So, you know, Slayer and Venom was a different story. That was a tougher pill to swallow because I discovered those much earlier, like age 11 or 10. But I was already ready, primed and ready for Possessed. Yeah, definitely sold me really quick.
I probably it wasn't such a smooth experience for me. I listened to some death when I was a kid. I kind of it didn't really click with me at the time. I was really more into like classic rock and like Motorhead and thrash metal to an extent, and I heard death and it was kind of cool, but it didn't really click with me. And then I heard a lot of the '90s stuff that was I didn't really get it at the time, and I just kind of worked my way backwards because I was like, how do we get from Slayer to Suffocation? Like, where's the middle ground? And then I remember,
right,
and when I met you, and kind of you sent me some more videos. You're like, shit, that's really good. Like,
yeah,
what is this? And he said, well, that's death metal, dude. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. So you're telling me there's something between clicky drums and like,
yeah.
but I'm still a very picky eater when it comes
Oh
to
yeah,
death metal.
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
I
I
really
always
love
joke around that we only listen to death metal that sounds like black metal and black
Yeah.
metal that sounds like death metal.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, that whole '90s vibe. I progressed, tried to progress, like to you know, and with get into well, not newer stuff, but you know, get into the '90s newer sounding stuff after I discovered Possess, and it didn't gel with me. It didn't click with me at all, and I was kind of confused about it. And I was like, okay, this just doesn't make sense, you know, for me. Like it kind of like cuts off at around 1991 for me. With you know some shining exceptions such as Morbid Angel, you know, throughout their entire career, I love that. But I was just like, okay, so this is weird. I really like the beginnings, but I don't like where this is going, you know. And that sweet spot, you know, after death metal just like gained traction, but stopped. You know, before it became a thing that everybody aped and all the bands started sounding the same. That's the sweet spot for me. Yeah. You know, when it was really, you know, when it was just a force of nature, basically around, you know, Altars of Madness. And,
well, let's not forget the Swedish death metal
absolutely,
stuff from the
absolutely,
like, late 80s, early 90s.
absolutely. You know,
I could not get enough of that. The first time I heard that,
it's an addictive record.
It is.
Definitely.
I actually, being a person that wasn't born at that time, well, not exactly, but I heard Revel in Flesh the first thing off of that record, and I just kept looping it over and over and over, and I thought, okay, I mean, it's part of a record, just listen to the other stuff, and I just could not stop listening to it.
Yeah, it's ironic. I probably like the stuff that was released before I was born better. You know, the really early Swedish stuff, Grotesque, Morbid, definitely has some of that black metal energy, and that is very important to us as well. You know, those are our favorite things basically when it comes to the genre. You know, before it became codified and before it became this one thing that everybody would ape. this one style, this one sound. Before it was a sound, when it was still more of a guiding mentality. That's why we don't differentiate between black and death metal. I guess in the same way most people do. You know, all this kind of this style of vocals means it's one thing or whatever. To me, it's more like how you view it, what angle you kind of like approach it from. You know, black metal always deals, I think, with allegory more and has a lot of biblical language. It has a very specific language to it, and death metal, to me, stands for shaking hands and approaching death in a very very direct, almost prosaic manner. I suppose, and point of our band is to combine both of those philosophical approaches more so than any kind of sound cues, because most of the stuff that influences us was recorded before these sound cues were even a thing, before you could say, well, black metal bands play like this, to me, or death metal bands play this other way. That's why I transitioned to a lot of black metal pretty quickly, because it kind of like took off where death metal fell off for me in the early 90s. It kind of like took that energy of those bands that I just mentioned and ran with it. And it's a big influence on us as well, definitely.
Not really. I mean,
Yeah,
we have plenty of gigs where like just like your minor regular stuff goes wrong, a string pops and you change
right.
guitars, and it's nothing to
Right.
write home about really. Nothing as grotesque as stepping into a flamethrower like James Hetfield.
Oh yeah, nothing like that. No, nothing. I hope that one kind of like stays.
That one person anecdote.
Yeah. I hope that.
We played on a rooftop once where it wasn't really level and like cabinets on wheels weren't a super great
Yeah.
idea. But again, it was an
Yeah,
easy
that
to
was just
solve
one of those
problem.
weird COVID things where everybody kind of like did something strange, and ours was playing on a rooftop because of social distancing and stuff. Would just like, because the rooftop was slanted, things would just like roll down the slanted roof.
Yeah,
So
but
that was
again,
a weird one.
it was an easy to solve problem. So
Yeah, and it's not something you should complain about. Just get out there,
rip it.
rip it.
For me, it's more the movies than the music, unfortunately.
I don't really watch any movies.
Yeah, I'm a huge movie buff, but I don't look at much at time. Like I don't care when a movie's released, but I really like The Menu. It's like a movie that deals with how people perceive art or value or don't value art. The kind of people that um, are just there for the looks or the money, and that was it was very moving in a kind of when you're an artist and you see people like come to your shows just to check you out, or people that are really into it and buy everything, and it's really nice to have that all distilled into one piece of art.
Right, the superficiality aspect of it.
Yeah, as well. And there's the super nerds that always take out all the magic because they know all the details
Right,
of how the
yeah.
stuff was made. And
Kind of applies to metal, right?
yeah,
Because there's no
Yeah,
mystery. That's part of the reason why it's so hard for me to find that mystique that you would usually get from a band like Bathory or Mayhem. A lot of the times, a band that recently captured a bit of that for me was Stress Angel. I just listened to Bursting Church very recently. That was a good record. That was something new that um, you know quite recent that grabbed my attention, definitely. Um, but yeah, just mostly discovering stuff from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s that kind of like flew past me.
I like helicopters that you showed me recently. I didn't know they were. I mean, they've been around since the '90s, so I don't know if that counts as recent. But their last record.
No, I don't think that counts as recent. Yeah, I was so surprised you didn't know helicopters.
Yeah.
It's a tough question. Forgive me for not being particularly invested in any one genre of metal as like an umbrella term.
Here's an unpopular opinion, or maybe a really popular. I don't know really how popular this opinion might be or how shared, but I mean, does it really need like a big future, like the next big thing?
I don't think it does, man.
I like some people will shit on throwback bands because they're not unoriginal, or I don't know, they're like, oh yeah, we've heard this before. And I'm like, hey, you know, the more the merrier. I mean, that doesn't mean I endorse like copycat bands. That's just
Right.
terrible. But I just think that there are so many shades of gray that people can explore and mix in
Right.
different ways. That
Right.
you know, we're in the postmodern era. There's like very little left to discover unless it's like some experimental noise music or whatever.
Yeah, right.
It's not the
right.
It's not the.
It doesn't really need to go anywhere, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't really need to go
it's
anywhere.
how you put
yeah.
them together.
It's
like,
how you put them together, and I think that there's like more than enough to paint with. The palette is there, and there's more than enough colors to paint with. It's just that people should probably focus more on what they have and what they can use, and to paint a different picture.
And the cool thing
rather
is
than
that
just like combining some kind of new thing, or just like forcing some kind of weird substrate into it that doesn't really fit, because the purity is also very important to. I'm not saying, like Yaka said, that you should just rehash the same old sounds, but definitely sticking to that original formula.
And there's one thing, that good songwriting never goes out of style.
Good songwriting never goes out of style. Writing good songs and sticking to that original mission statement the genre has, that definitely does not need to change. In fact, it should not change. It should not have changed, and it should not change. So the future of death metal, I don't necessarily care for the genre as a whole, but the bands and the people I do care about, I hope just keep mining those depths and exploring that original wave of inspiration, and adding different interesting shades to it, and mutating the form, but not breaking it in half and trying to fuse some kind of other beast onto it that does not fit onto it. The one that kind of like, for me, unites everything. And again, this is probably not a straight answer in the typical sense of the word, but I would have to say the Somberlin, probably, because it's the one record that ties everything together for me. Uh, Definitely the Somberlin by Dissection. It to me, like I said.
Would you say that's a death metal album?
Yeah, I did.
No.
Yeah, I did. Because to me, it encapsulates what the genre should be about. The feeling, the atmosphere, its uniqueness, definitely.
Like, I'm kind of rolling through my mind what I should say here, but I really can't. Um, hmm. I don't know. One record that kind of, I wouldn't say many people would peg it as a death metal record, but I think that a record that kind of laid very solid groundwork for everything in this genre, like the intensity and everything, is Pleasure to Kill.
Oh yeah.
And
definitely.
If I have to pick the album that most like resonated with me in discovering death metal, I would definitely say like Altars of Madness, or Covenant, because
oh yeah,
it was the first time I said, okay, this is something really different to
right.
stuff that I'm used to.
Right, and it's different to a lot of other death metal as well.
Probably not the most original answer, but
fuck that. If it gets the job done, and those records definitely do, I think. Spread our brand of misery, darkness, death, and satanic black and death metal.
Play live as much.
As much as we can. This music was made for the stage. There's fire in it. There's energy in it. There's fire and energy in our performance as well. We put a lot of stock into that. We're a fucking whirlwind live. That's something that is always important to us. And
yeah, evolve our stage show.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole shebang: lights, pyrotechnics if possible, props if possible.
Play with like-minded individuals across the world stages. That is definitely on our agenda, and we just kind of like put our heads together a little bit to write the next record as well.
Yeah, already started the process, kind of figure out how to change it up.
Yeah, we had some plans. We had touring plans for 2023, but these are getting rescheduled to 2024 just because of the extreme oversaturation and the person we're booking doing the booking with just recommended, it would be much easier
Yeah.
to reschedule. So that is some of the hardships we're facing, definitely. But yes, playing with like-minded individuals and getting the message out, basically. That's
Yeah.
what we're about, and writing
Yeah.
new music that is probably going to challenge people's conceptions of our what our sound is. You know, harkening back to the whole discussion about different genres and whatever. You know, just like dropping those limitations and trying to capture our mission statement and our vibe.
Yeah, one idea I've been like mulling over in my head
Mhm.
was where's the line between like where does extreme music start and end?
Right.
Because people will say it's the production or it's the speed or it's the riffs. Like I just kind of took all of those answers that I came up with myself and like talking to other people just kind of threw them at the wall.
Right, and see, trying to stretch
Yeah.
those borders,
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
And you mentioned Merciful Fate before. If that's an influence, why would a death metal band that is focusing on the same spiritual subject matter as Merciful Fate, why would they shun the musical influence
Yeah.
of Merciful Fate? That makes zero sense to me. And just like
Exactly.
trying to expand musically, but keep to the original MO, mission statement, rather. You know,
Yeah.
is definitely something that is in the cards for us in the future.